Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at the FAQs for the IELTS listening exam. What are FAQs? They are frequently asked questions that students or candidates often ask before they do the exam, and I'm hoping that in this video I'll be able to give you some insights, some information about these frequently asked questions so that you don't need to ask the same question again and again. So let's start with this one here, which says 7.5 over 9. Can you guess what that means? It's talking about your IELTS score. So in the actual exam, if you got, for example, 30 out of 40, that means you've got a band score of 7, which is very good. What I'm trying to do is get you over 7.5 in these IELTS step-by-step courses. So I'm hoping to get you to 32 out of 40, so only 8 mistakes. 7.5 is a very respectable mark, and it will get you into almost any university, at least for your English language levels. I'm not talking about anything else, but your English language levels, 7.5 is a very respectable result. Okay, let's have a look at the other one now. This one with the tick and the cross. That's talking about how I can gain points or how I could lose points. So the question is, do I lose points for incorrect answers? The basic answer is no. So you get points for correct answers. You can never lose points. Once you have gained points, you will never lose them. So I know that there are some tests in the world which seem to be very unfair, but some tests where if you've got the incorrect answer, it will remove a mark that you've already got. So for example, if you've got 3 correct answers and then your 4th answer is incorrect, they -1 mark from that. So you go back down to 2, which seems to be very unfair, but I think that's to discourage guessing. However, in the IELTS exam, you will not get penalized for an incorrect answer. Therefore, you are allowed to guess. Never leave a blank space, a space that has not been filled in on your answer sheet. Always try to guess, even if you don't know the answer, because there is a chance, especially if it's a multiple choice chance, there's a 33% chance that you will get the correct answer. Okay, now let's have a look at these numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about ordering. So what order do the answers, the questions and the answers come in? Well, the answers, the questions are in the order that you hear them. So for example, if we look down here, and let's have a look at the example on the right hand side. It says 17, 18, 19, 20, Joy Parkins, David Field, etc. So basically, the audio will be talking about these people in order. They'll talk about Joy Parkins, and then you need to match them with A or B or C or D or E or F to that person. So it will come in the order of the person that's being spoken about because of the numbers 17, 18, 19, 20. The only difference, however, is these type of questions here on the left. The multiple choice questions, when you've got quite a number. This says it's not written at the top here, but let's say, for example, it says questions 15 and 16. So that question is a single question, and the answers may not be in the order that you see them here. They may not be in A, then coming B, then C, then D. The answer can be, for example, the first answer might be E, and then the second answer might be B. And then A, C, and D are incorrect answers. The same thing applies here on the right again. They may be talking about Joy Parkins at the beginning of the audio, but the answer for her, the matching answer, may be F, which obviously is the last option of these questions, these answers A to F. So the questions come in the order, but the answers usually do, except in questions like this, multiple choice questions, and matching questions like this on the right hand side. Another thing that I haven't mentioned here is the maps or the diagrams. The map is not necessarily in order because a map has got an opportunity or a possibility to have an answer at the bottom left, and then an answer in the top right, and an answer in the middle, and an answer in the top left. So a map or a diagram is also one that doesn't have a necessary it doesn't follow the order according to its according to, how can I say this, according to moving down the page. However, the numbering will always be the same. So if the first thing that you need to think about is relating to a number 1 on the diagram, then that will be the first thing you need to think about. Then number 2 in the top right, number 3. But that's unusual. Usually the answers in a diagram or a map, the numbering happens on the page from moving down the page, and then the letters A, B, C, D, E are on the map or are on the diagram, and that is the reason why they may be in a different order. Okay. Right, let's have a look at this one here. Can I write on the question paper? And the answer, of course, is yes. In fact, you should write on the paper. Take full advantage of that question paper. You can write all over it. You don't have access to a pen or a highlighter, but you will have a pencil. They will give you a pencil, and you should bring an eraser with you, something to rub out if you've made a mistake. And at the bottom here it says, so you really should, and it says here, use the 10 minutes at the end of the exam to neatly fill in your answers. So use that time to fill in the answers with capital letters if you prefer. I would prefer doing it in capital letters if I were you, just because it's clearer. And it says this is why I would recommend against doing the computer-based test. So recently the IELTS exam is now, it's possible now to do it via computer. However, have a look at these cons. Cons are the negative things about doing it on the computer. You can't skip ahead to see the questions in the next section, which is something that I do. You'll see in all of my example videos that I skip ahead because I don't need to waste time listening to someone talking about the example, for example, or the last half a minute of checking your answers. If I'm confident, I go straight into the next section. If I'm using a computer, I have to stay there until it's finished, and then I can move on to the next section, which is very frustrating for me. The second thing is that in a paper-based test, you have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your answer sheet. In the computer-based test, it's only 2 minutes because you're not transferring, you're filling in the answers as you listen, which can be quite complicated and difficult. So you get 2 minutes at the end, but really that's only for spelling. It's not for transferring any answers over, and you'll see why. In point number 3, you get a pen and paper, but you don't have a chance to, you don't have the question paper. So all you have is a blank piece of paper and a pen, sorry, a pencil. Okay, so that means you're typing in the answers at the time that you're listening. So you can't write on the question paper, you can't circle A, oh no, actually that I meant B, these sort of things. It's I find it very important to be able to do that, and the computer-based test prevents that from happening. And then navigating forward and backwards can be difficult. You have to do a lot of practice with the computer. Of course, the IELTS does give you an opportunity to practice a computer-based test, and in this course I will show you some examples of how the computer-based test works. So you will have to practice that, but it can be difficult. Navigation might be a problem, and I have heard of students, some of them getting an example sentence before they start, and some students not hearing it at all. So there's a software issue as well. Some computers do work properly and some don't work completely, and you take a risk of getting a computer that doesn't work to the highest standard. So paper-based, if you can, I would strongly recommend. Okay, then the next one is this little pen here, or pencil, and that's the question, can I get extra paper to write on? The answer is no. You are only allowed to use the paper that is given, the question paper in fact. You can write on anywhere on the question paper, but they will not give you an extra paper in the listening exam. They will not give you an extra paper to write on. In the writing exam, you can have as many papers as you want. And of course you can't bring in your own paper. In fact, you can't bring anything in except a bottle of water and an eraser in your reading, listening and writing. Writing, you're allowed a pen, but you can't bring anything in, and that includes watches. You can't bring even your watch in, especially nowadays. You've got smart watches which you can possibly use to cheat, look up in a dictionary. So even a watch is not allowed to be brought in, certainly not a mobile phone. I think that's the main things that you need to know about. Okay. Now, what accents will I hear in the exam? You'll primarily hear Southeast English accents. When I say Southeast English, I mean London, Oxford, Cambridge, those towns and cities in the southeast of England, of the UK. And then you'll hear Australian, because the IELTS exam was originally created by an Australian company called IDP. So they've got a lot of Australian accents in it, and you'll hear American accents as well. You may also hear New Zealand accents, which is quite similar to Australian and quite similar to South African English as well. You'll hear Canadian English, which, as you probably know, is quite similar to American English. At the bottom here I've got weak forms. So the weak forms of British regional accents are sometimes also possible. So some accents from the UK, Scottish for example, Northern, Northwest, Northeast English is quite different to Southeast English. Welsh accent as well. So they will have people that have got those accents, but a lot weaker than they would normally speak when they're living in their own city. So it would be, imagine somebody from Scotland who's lived in London for 10 years, and so their accent has become a lot weaker, but still it's got influences from the Scottish accent. So you'll hear some weak forms of regional accents, but they shouldn't stop you from being able to understand the English perfectly well. Okay, now the next one is this headphones here. Do candidates use headphones? Yes, the answer is usually they do, especially nowadays. In the past it was 50-50, but it still depends on the center. So if you've got a small center which only takes maybe 20 or 10 people at a time, there is a chance that you'll be in a small room and there will be a loudspeaker or speakers that will play the listening for you. However, if there's a large center, a large number of people, then it's almost certain that you will get headphones. Okay, but always phone the center before the exam if you really want to find out. And it's good to know these sort of things. Little details like that will help you to relax. Don't rely on the day to go, I wonder if we're going to have headphones, if it's going to stress you out. Phone the center beforehand and find out. Okay, now let's have a look at this one about the clock. How do I write times and dates? Okay, so AM means in the morning. So 9 AM, I can have a space after it, I can have no space, it doesn't matter. I can put 9.00 AM for 9 o'clock in the morning, and 9:00 AM, any of these. But don't write 9 o'clock, because more likely than not, they are asking for a single word. Write one word in the space. Usually these type of questions require one word, and if I put 9 and then O and then apostrophe clock, that is 2 words. It's one word and a number, but usually they're asking for one word and one word or a number, sorry. One word or a number, yes. So 9 o'clock would be a one word and a number, which would be incorrect. So rather just use this. It's much quicker to write it like this anyway. So 9 or 9 AM means 9 in the morning. Now look at this one here, 8 PM. That's 8 in the evening. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to assume that it's not a good idea to write it in the 24-hour format. So I've put a red cross here simply because you're taking a risk, even though technically it's correct. So rather just put 8 AM if the answer is 8 in the evening and they're asking for a a single word. Okay, look at the dates now. 25 May is acceptable, 25th May is acceptable. Although we do say 25th of May, it's very unlikely that they will say two words and a number for these questions. Rather just put 25 May or 25th May and forget the preposition of, just to be safe, because there's a chance that of will be marked incorrect, even though we say it that way. When we write it down, we seldom write 25th of May unless it's in formal writing, and it is more likely this type of question will come up in a form or a note or a table, in which case, remember, we don't write grammar words, if you remember from the previous video. Okay, and then the last one here is the in brackets. Can I use brackets in my answers? Certainly not. Never use brackets in your answers because it will be marked wrong. And I know that in the official answers, sometimes they show brackets. That means that the word or the letter in brackets is one way of writing it. So for example, we've got here number 3, garden, and then with the apostrophe S. With a bracket, S close bracket. That means the answer could be garden or gardens. That's what it means. It certainly is not the answer. So the answer for number 3 is not gardens with a bracket around the S. Okay, so I hope that that is some use to you, some of these frequently asked questions. These, remember, are specific to the listening exam. There is a FAQ video about the exam, the IELTS exam in general, if you haven't seen that one already. But this one, remember, is specific to the IELTS. If you have any other questions other than the ones that have already come up here, of course, feel free to ask them in the Q&A or on the Reddit post for this section. Thank you.